Hello, my name is James Sanderson, and today I would just like to share with you something very heavy on my heart. I got to share this with the teens the other day, and someone asked me to record this, so I hope it'll be beneficial to you because it sure is to me. And I'd like to talk today about just the joy of returning home, and I'd like to talk about the story of the prodigal son. So let me show you where my home is. You'll see two places here on the map, Michigan and Texas. Today I live in Waxahachie, Texas, but that is not my original home. I actually grew up in Michigan and spent a lot of time in northern Michigan. And there is just something about going home. This is where I grew up. We owned the Rapid River Motel here in northern Michigan. The house is in the middle. We had 6 rooms on one side, 6 on the other. We had 10 acres. It was in between Kalkaska and Mansalona, and I just had a playground in that backyard. Just loved to play out in the woods. Sometimes I'd leave in the morning and wouldn't come home until that night. It was just a fun place to grow up. The river just down the road here. I love to go down by the river, the Rapid River, and you can see the snow there. We got a lot of snow up in northern Michigan. Used to run snowmobiles, and it was just a fun time going down by the river. In fact, I remember crossing the river right here with my dad when we were hunting, or he was hunting. I was just going along with him. But at the time, this was actually a beaver dam, and now it's just logs and things like that. But I remember crossing over with my dad over that river. Just some good memories. This is an aerial view of northern Michigan, not far from my house. This is Torch Lake. National Geographic rated this lake the 3rd most beautiful lake in the world. Spent a lot of time on this lake. You can see Lake Michigan. Just lakes everywhere, and the water is clean. You can see right to the bottom. It's just a great place to live and to grow up. You're never more than a mile and a quarter, I think, from open water in Michigan. So there is water everywhere, and I just love it. One of the things you do when it gets cold is those lakes freeze over, and a lot of people like to go ice fishing. And so you take this ice shanty and you put it out there on the lake and drill a hole in the ice. You can drive a truck or a car on that ice. It gets so thick and sit there and fish. And I remember me and my dad and others going out and ice fishing for the day. Have a little heater inside. Just a different way of life than down here in Texas. Uh, and I remember this. The snow would get so heavy that we would have to shovel the top of our roofs off because, man, it would get so heavy that could collapse the roof. And so we had to get up there and get all that snow off there. I remember doing that several times. It wasn't really fun then, but I look back to it now and it was just good memories. Then after preaching school, after I had left and went to preaching school at Sunset School of Preaching in Lubbock, Texas, I returned back to that area and actually moved over to a town called Frankfort. And man, this is just a beautiful place. We were just a quarter mile from Lake Michigan, our house. You could hear the waves from Lake Michigan, and you could see the lighthouse here in Frankfort, and it was just beautiful. You always got the sunsets, and there was never two that was the same. They were always different. Here's a picture from the beach. Boy, just look at that nice sand in northern Michigan on that beach, and looking out at the pier there in Frankfort. Just a great place. This is the Sleeping Bear Dunes, just north of where I live. It was probably a half hour. Get in the car and you walk through the woods. You park your car here. You walk through the woods. You come up, and just as you cross the top, boom! All of a sudden, here's Lake Michigan. It just opens up, and you're so high up in the air, but it is breathtaking. Beautiful, beautiful place. Beautiful place. We would go up to Mackinac Island. This is where the Upper and Lower Peninsula sits, and there's a bridge. It's 5 miles across, and you can see the ferries that would go over to the island. Well, now they start taking you under the bridge. You can actually look up and see the traffic going over the bridge there. And oh, I just love Mackinac. Just love that place. And this is the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island. Beautiful hotel. It's the longest porch in the world. And you can just sit there and you can see the bridge. You can see ships coming by. They'll sit there and serve you iced tea. It is the most relaxing thing to do, is to just sit there and watch all of that. It's a beautiful place. Oh, and there's no cars on this island. It's all horses and buggies, and it's just clip clop and hearing the hooves of the horses. It's just a fun place to be. And then just down the street from where we lived, there in Frankfurt, was a ski resort called Crystal Mountain. Love to go over there. Man, you'd see those big snowflakes coming down, and you'd see the horses going by, and bonfires, and just those big flakes as people are skiing down this hill. And at Christmas, boy, it would be lit up, and it was just a wonderful place to live. And I just got to say, there's nothing like going home. There's nothing like going back. Even all these years later, I just love going back to northern Michigan. It's just that the smell in the air. There's just a feeling about being at home. And maybe you have those same feelings where you grew up. Today I'd like to talk about the story of the prodigal son. And I'd like to parallel that with my story. Okay? Because it's really the same. Whenever I get a new Bible, I'll always write, when I go to Luke chapter 15 and find the story of the prodigal son, I always write my name in it, right over top of that story, because that story is my story. And maybe you have a story like that too. Home sweet home. There's nothing like being at home. So let's get into the text. Let's go to Luke chapter 15, and Jesus is going to continue here. The story has 3 parts to it. We're going to look at the 3rd part. And he says, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to the father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. So the son wants to leave. He wants to leave home, okay? And he wants to share of his estate. Give me my money, okay? I just want to leave. And so there he is, taking that money, giving it to him. And you know, that's the same thing that I did. I had reasons, not good reasons, but I remember leaving. And I left the church. Some tough things had happened. There were some things that had happened with my grandmother. Some people had not treated her very well. My parents ended up getting a divorce at that same time. The two were actually connected. And so, in a sense, I lost, and because of this, the church divided. And so, in a sense, I lost the church, being 17. I was very committed at that time. I lost my family, in a sense. And so I decided to go off to my friends. And that's what I did. Not good reasons, ever good reasons to leave Jesus, but those are the decisions that I made. And I remember leaving, just like the prodigal son. And you know, when you leave the church, you leave the Father. The two go hand in hand. When you leave the church, you leave Jesus. You can't have one without the other. And that's what I did. And boy, I'll tell you what, it was tough. Not long after that, the young son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. So, you just put the story together, okay? What do you think this son got into? What kind of living did he get into? Well, he's left the family, he's left God, and now he is out there in a world of sin. That's the same world that I got into. And I want to tell you, you don't want to ever see and experience the things that I seen when I left the church. Got into drinking and partying, did some drugs, did all kinds of things. And let me tell you, one sin leads to another, to another, to another. And it just gets worse and worse. Have you been there? Have you been on that side? I have. I've been there. But the Father is saying, hey, don't leave. Come back. Come back. Don't leave. I want you to stay. But I decided to go. And so did the prodigal son. After he had spent everything, oh boy, here we go. There was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So again, this is a story about God, and the story about this prodigal son. Okay? Now, who is in charge of the weather? It's not Mother Nature. Please do not use Mother Nature. I have no idea who this lady is. This is God's world. He can do whatever he wants to in it. So, here is a severe famine, okay? And he begins to be in need. Things start to get rough. And let me tell you, I am very thankful that sin hurts. Because if it didn't, we might just die in it. All of us. So I am thankful that all sin hurts. And this prodigal son is starting to hurt. Man, I'm broke. I need help. And you can be broke in a lot of ways. Not just financially, but spiritually and just broken inside. And here's that famine. Where is the food? Where is the things that I need to live? And then things get tough. And you will go into a depression. Okay? Things are hard. This can happen. I've seen it happen in my life, and I've seen it happen in lots of other lives. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. No one gave him anything. Again, sin hurts. So he is so hungry, he is so desperate, he wants something so bad to eat, and he's got nothing. So, is that how it works? Yes. And I can remember the day in my life of hitting bottom. I remember when I went to Germany. I was in the army during this time. And when you go and take the train to Frankfurt, Germany, to get across the street after you get off the train there at the Bahnhof, you get off and you have to go down an escalator and go across and then go back up. And I thought that was as far down as you could go. And during this journey, actually for me it was 14 years, I thought I had hit bottom. But then I realized as the years went on that I was there in Germany, that there was another level. You could actually go down another level, down another escalator, and go down even farther. And then I found out there was even another escalator that went down another story. And I just kept going lower and lower. And sometimes you think you're at the bottom, but God says, you know what? I can take you down even farther. And that's what God was doing in my life. And I went lower and lower and lower. As my friend Richard Rogers says, you know, when you finally hit rock bottom, there's only one way to go, and that's back up. So here he is, the prodigal son. He used to have all these riches, but now what does he have? He has nothing. I mean, just think about it. Just think about what pigs eat. I mean, you're just longing to just eat what they eat. Does that look very appetizing to you? No, it does not to me. And he wanted to eat even that, and he couldn't even get that. It's pretty sad. It's pretty sad. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and here I am starving to death?" So now he's starting to think about home again. The home that he left, the home that was just so wonderful, so nice to be at, the one, though, that he chose to leave. And now he is starting to remember home. Oh, he's starting to get it, isn't he? He's starting to wake up. And I remember that day in my life when I started to get it. When I started finally waking up. I remember just prior to that, I remember standing in my yard. I had hit absolute bottom, and I remember screaming at the top of my lungs in my yard. This is as a grown man. God, where are you? God couldn't have been closer to me. I mean, just think about it. All that blood running through your hands, the way this body works. Who keeps this thing going? It can only be God. He was right there. But I couldn't see him because of my sin, because of the choices that I had made. It's a terrible place to be. Terrible. But then the prodigal son says, "I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven. I've sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men.' So I got up and went." And he went up to his father. He decided to go back home, didn't he? It's hard. It's humiliating to go back home after you've chosen to leave, after you've gotten into so much sin and done so much wrong. It is a hard thing to do, to go back home. The son goes back home. But while he was still a long ways off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. Isn't that amazing? See, the father was looking every day for the son, for all of his prodigal sons. My father was looking for me too. He was looking every day, waiting and watching. But if you notice in the story, he didn't run over there to the pig pen and start feeding me steak sandwiches, because if he had of, I would have never came home. Sometimes it's good to hurt. And here's a question I have for you. Does God love us enough to hurt us? Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Just like our fathers, mothers, they're willing to hurt us on our backside to keep us from running into the street, because the little pain that I will feel on my backside will be a lot less than when that truck hits me if I run into the street. And that's what God, our Father, does. He hurts us enough because he hurts us because he loves us. He cares about us, and he doesn't want to see us go through eternity separated from him forever. And that's the real pain. And none of us want to go there. So every day he was looking. Every day he was watching. And finally here he comes. Here comes the son. And they embrace. And you just think about that. You think about that embrace. And you're saying to yourself, look, I know I'm not worthy. I know I don't belong. I know I'm not worthy of your forgiveness. I'm not worthy of your mercy and your grace. I have no right to be here. I have no right to be even in this family. And that father just holds on to you. It's a wonderful story. Just think about it. Just think about those loving arms wrapped around you after you've done so much wrong. And that's our Father. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I'm not worthy to be called your son. And that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. If we go out based off of our performance, none of us are worthy to come back. None of us are worthy, especially for those that have left. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Now, one thing that this story clearly proves, that the concept that some of our religious friends believe or have been taught about once saved, always saved, that is not true. This story right here proves it. This son of mine was dead and he's alive again. Okay? So he was in the house, right? He's in the family of God. He leaves the family of God. Now he's dead, spiritually dead. And then he comes back and he's alive again. He was lost and now he's found. So they began to celebrate. This disproves the whole theory of once saved, always saved. When I left the Father, I was lost. I was spiritually dead. I had left the family. I no longer worshiped God. Oh, I thought to myself, I'm still a pretty good person. I'll probably make it to heaven if I die. That wasn't true. The Bible says no one is righteous, not one. That was a false belief. I was as lost could be. Even though I was a Christian before. Even though I had even preached sermons and lessons prior to that. Even though I was very faithful. I made a decision, not a good decision, to leave. And I was separated from God. But then I came home. That's the key. Come home. Put the best robe on him. Put a ring on his finger. Sandals on his feet. Bring a fattened calf. Let's have a feast. Let's eat. That is family status. And it's hard to believe. None of it is deserved. But that's what God does when a prodigal comes home. He brings you back into the family. And it's so important. It's so important to understand that. He loves us so much. You know, at this point, I think about the apostles. I think about the apostles with Jesus, and they all scattered with Jesus. Even Peter did some terrible things as he followed Jesus after they had hauled him away and they were trying him. And there he is. He's standing there in this courtyard, warming himself by a fire. And people are saying, hey, aren't you with Jesus? He said, no, nah, I don't know him. And they asked him again, and then asked him a third time, and he gets so angry. I do not know the man. And what does Jesus do? He turns and looks at him right in his eyes. And Peter runs away and weeps bitterly. See, they all left. All the apostles abandoned Jesus. But then you have Judas. Judas betrayed Jesus, didn't he? He did. And he also was remorseful. Threw the silver back in and then went out and hung himself. But I want to tell you the difference between Judas and the other 11. The other 11 ran back to Jesus. Judas went and tried to handle it himself. Here's the key. Always run back to Jesus. They were all sinners. They all failed the same. There's no way you could say that Judas did worse than what Peter did. They were both very, very guilty. But one ran back and one ran away. That's the difference. Always run to Jesus. And so they had a feast and they celebrated. Can you imagine that? I mean, just think that meal, that family status. Can you imagine sitting at the table with Jesus? And that's what we get to do. We are reminded of that every Sunday, that we sit at his table, we commune with him, we remember his death, his burial, his resurrection, all celebrated. But we sit at the table with Jesus. And none of us are worthy. But he says, come. I love this verse in Luke. It says, I long to eat this Passover meal with you. He wants so badly for us to sit at his table. And he's made all the preparations. He's done everything he possibly can for us. And all we have to do is go and sit. There it is. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's so good to be back home. Go back home. Go back to the church. No matter what you've done, God can forgive you. Just run back to Jesus. It's so good to be home. Don't let anything keep you from Jesus. I pray this lesson will help you. If I can help you in any way, you give me a call at the Brown Street Church of Christ in Waxahachie, Texas. And let's just talk. I love you. God loves you more. And again, run back to Jesus. We'll see you next time.